Hello everybody, my name is Zeke and welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my March reading wrap-up. This month, I don't know, it was a bit of a mixed bag. I read like 9 books, which is, great, very happy with that. But it was mixed. There were some that I did really enjoy. I think I had 1 5-star this month, which is great. But also I read some of the worst books I've read this year so far, so also, it's interesting, this month was very varied in what I read. I think I had a good mix of literary stuff, some fantasy, some more like speculative leaning stuff. I read a lot more than I thought I was going to, which surprised me. I thought I was going to be a lot more busy than I was, so I did get a lot of reading done. So the first book I read this month I got from the library, and it was a bit on a whim. It's Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. In this book, I think it came out either last year or 2021, and I don't know, I've seen it everywhere. And I really didn't know anything about it except that it's very long and a lot of people liked it and a lot of people were mixed on it. That's what I was seeing generally, and so I was just curious. I just saw it in the library one day and I was like, I might as well pick it up. And I was pretty mixed on it. There wasn't anything really like terrible about it, but it was way too long. Basically the book follows multiple perspectives ranging across like centuries and centuries. We have 2 like past perspectives, we have 2 present-ish and 1 future, and it's not really easy to explain the plot. We just flip back and forth, and I don't know, I feel like some perspectives were much more interesting than others. I think the ones in the past were incredibly boring, and I also feel like the connections between all of them just weren't enough to really grab my attention. I don't think they were supposed to be like really grandiose and whatever, but I just feel like I was kind of left disappointed by how it all came together in the end, and I just don't think it was really worth it was like 600 pages. It's a big commitment. I really didn't think it was worth it. So I got through it relatively fast when I was actually reading it, but I found myself not wanting to pick it up. And so it took me like more than a week to actually read. I got what I was trying to do, but I didn't really think that it was worth all that page count and all the different perspectives. And I felt the messaging was kind of heavy-handed, and there wasn't enough actually going on in the plot to keep me that engaged. So I gave it a 3-star just because not really feeling it, but I honestly think I'm kind of generous with that. It might be more of a 2.5 because it really just, for me, was not that good. The next book I read was Kim Ji-young, born 1982. The translated work, it takes place in Korea, and we follow this woman throughout her life, and it really just talks about gender inequality just in every single moment in her life and how that kind of builds to her going crazy. Really just see how at every turn there's something, and there's always like just terrible things happening to her, and things that are just incredibly unfair. We see it in childhood, we see it as she's growing up, as she's entering her career. We see it as she gets married and just as she's growing up. And it's not fun to read. You feel very angry reading it because it's just, she tries so hard to just live her life, and at every turn there's got to be something in her way. It's a really short novel and it packs a huge punch, and I think it's really important to read. It makes you feel a lot of heavy feelings, I think. And so I gave it like 4.5 stars. It's obviously a fiction book, but we blend in some footnotes and stuff like that with actual information. And I think it added a lot to the story, but at the same time, it also kind of takes you out of it. But I think that's just a personal thing, and I still really enjoyed it. Next was another huge win for me. That was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This I've seen everywhere recently, and it's also translated, I think, from Italian, and just very slow, very character focused. We're focused on this town, this community, and especially we focus in on these 2 young girls. And this is a series. This is the first book in a 4-book series, and it's basically following these two girls as they grow up, and I'm very excited to get to the rest of it because this only goes to like their like teenage years, and it's just such a great depiction, and this is what everyone says, of female friendship, and it just really gets to the heart of their relationship and how they make their way in the world and in this community. And apart from just the two of the girls, we really do dive deep into all the members of the community, their families, and it's just a really touching portrayal of these people and very complex relationships. There are parts of this that are incredibly sad and hard to read, and then there are parts of this that are just incredibly uplifting and beautiful, and I just blend together to just an incredible reading experience. But it is very, very slow. It's really, there's no real plot. I mean, we're watching them grow up. It's really just about the characters, and you really feel that. And it's really incredible, and I gave this, I think, 4.5 stars as well. Next one is something I was actually looking forward to for quite a while, and it ended up being pretty disappointing for me. This is a huge book. It's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and this, I mean, won like 5 million awards last year. Everyone read it, apparently, except for me. I waited until this year. I got it as like a book of the month, like add-on gift thing, and I don't know, I was expecting a lot more from it. I think it was engaging. We follow these two people, their friendship in like the video game making world, and for some reason I thought there would be like fantasy or sci-fi elements. I feel like the cover kind of gives that vibe a little, but really no, it's just general fiction. And I don't know, I feel like I expected more, and I wasn't really as engaged in all like the video game stuff as I thought I could be. And I didn't really like any of the characters. The plot wasn't that engaging. It wasn't that there wasn't stuff happening. I just couldn't really bring myself to care that much, and I didn't really get much out of it. And I even now, like, I read this really recently, and I like don't really remember much of it except for like a few plot points here and there. While I was reading it, I was getting through it fine, but looking back after I read it, I was really just like, why did I read that? Why was I so excited for that? I didn't really get as much out of it as I thought I was going to. So that was pretty disappointing. That was quite the letdown, but I'm still gonna give it 3 stars just because, as I said, it's engaging enough, and I think that this book has an audience. It just was not for me. The next book I read was another book I was looking forward to a lot just because I love this author's other work, and it's Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. And I kind of let my expectations lower a little bit just because I'd seen reviews that said this one just wasn't as good as her other books, which I love. I think I gave both of them 5 stars. That's Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You. Those 2 books are just incredible. They explore really, like, they're based on relationships and characters, and that's what I think she does so well. And this book is speculative, and we take place in a world where everything is censored and banned books, and then they start taking children away from homes, and people start disappearing, and we follow this young boy, and his mother has been gone for quite a few years, and we're just following him living in society, and then some stuff happens and it all comes together. And I just feel like there was nothing really interesting about it. It was very predictable and also very bland in a lot of ways. I think the messaging was really important and really good and really relevant to, you know, our modern political and social landscape, but I think it was very heavy-handed, and there was like no subtlety to it. And personally, when I'm reading books that have a political message, I want it to not just be right in my face. The whole book was just the message, and the plot came secondary, and I think that's not what I want to read generally. And especially after loving her past 2 books so much, I was just very disappointed because I thought, going in, I knew I probably wouldn't like it as much, but I thought I would still enjoy it. And I just didn't really care. And I'm very excited to see what she does next, and I'm hoping that it's kind of a return to her earlier work, and we'll see how that goes. But this one was not for me. Next, I read a classic. This is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and this was great. Sometimes I feel like classics, it's really hard to form opinions on them just because maybe you think, oh, I'm supposed to like this, and maybe I just didn't get it, or sometimes they're just harder to read, or they can be intimidating. I think that's a general thing that a lot of people agree with. But this one, I don't know, it wasn't too long, and I feel like I didn't know a lot about the story going into it. Obviously, you know, the general, oh, this guy makes a monster, goes crazy, and kills people, blah, 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 blah. But this is really a very introspective book, and we really do focus a lot on questions of humanity, what it means to be human. We really do follow the psyche of both Frankenstein, who makes the monster, and the monster itself. And I don't know, I just think it's really like feels like a character study. There's this really deep tension throughout the whole book, and this really great dark atmosphere that you would expect, but I just think it's handled very well. And the writing is beautiful, and I thought there's this framing device that they use that has little sections at the beginning and the end of the book, and has like a little cut in every once in a while that I just think is, I don't know, is fun and unexpected for me at least. And I just really enjoyed my time with this, and so I gave it 4 stars. Okay, next I read Sula by Toni Morrison, and in the past few months I've read a bunch of Toni Morrison. I read The Bluest Eye and Song of Solomon, and just, I love both of them so much. She's such an incredible writer. I mean, I'm obviously not the person to say that. She's highly regarded, and I just happened to start reading her books, and now I can't stop. And there's just something about the way she writes communities and the way she writes characters. I feel like it's just unmatched in every way. And the way she just builds on these people and these communities, and everything feels so organic and so natural. And all that coupled with just the most beautiful and profound writing ever. And this one especially, this one's short, and it just, you get these characters and you feel so deep within them, and you feel like you understand this community so well and these families that make it up. We follow 2 girls, Sula and Nell, as they grow up and become women, and we follow the relationship between them and how they kind of differ from each other, and then they separate and come back together, and a bunch of stuff happens. I don't want to spoil it, but it's just very beautifully written, and it's very shocking at times, and it's just a very powerful reading experience. You do really just feel like these characters are real. They feel real, they feel in your face, and there's little explanation to their actions. We're just watching them do these things. Things go wrong, and it's crazy at times, but it's just a wonderful experience. And so this is the one book I gave 5 stars this month. Just next, I read Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. This is another one, hugely critically acclaimed, came out 3 years ago, maybe 4, and won the Booker Prize, which is a big award in literature, and I completely understand after reading it. I've realized recently, and I feel like I've known for a while, characters are basically the most important thing in any book I read. I have to believe these characters are real, and I have to be able to empathize with them and understand them. And this book does that so well. Follow this boy and his family and his relationship with his mother in Scotland during the 80s, and we see their lives as they fluctuate, as people come in and out of them, as they have to move from place to place. And we especially focus on his mother's struggles with alcoholism and addiction. And we also see his struggle with masculinity and growing up as being quote unquote different. And it's just a really, I know I keep saying powerful, but it's just a very powerful exploration of these characters and their relationships and who they are and how they find their place in the world. And it's very sad and it's very slow, but I think it just encapsulates their lives so completely. And once again, atmosphere, you have this pervasive tone of like depression throughout the whole thing, and it's overwhelming at times, but that's the point. And we also see the mother fluctuate into periods of where she's doing better and periods where she's doing worse. And it's just so hard to watch because you know how it's not gonna end well. I mean, I feel like that's pretty obvious from when you start. And just devastating, and completely deserves all the awards, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The last book I read, and this is probably my least favorite book I've read this year, is Age of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the second book in the Legends of the First Empire series, which is a 6-book series, and it's a prequel series to another series this author has written, which I have not read, but you're supposed to be able to read it separately and still be able to understand everything and be okay. And so far, that's not the issue. That's fine. I just feel like it's heavily disappointing me at every step, because I read the first book at the beginning of February, and I didn't love it, but I was engaged enough and intrigued enough to continue with the series. I was chalking most of my problems with it up to it being the first book and him having to build upon things and whatever. But after reading the second book, I just don't think it's a very well-written or well-crafted story or plot in general. We're really just not doing anything new or interesting with it, and it feels incredibly predictable, and the characters are just not that interesting, and the world is very bland and basic, and there's nothing new about it. I feel like I've read this before, even though I don't even read that much like classic fantasy. I really don't. I just feel like this is the most like basic thing I can think of. We basically follow this world where there are humans and there are Frey, and the Frey are like the elves, and the elves have oppressed the humans and acted almost as like gods to them for their entire existence as far back as they can remember. And the whole plot sets off when one of the humans accidentally kills one of the Frey. And so that's like a very interesting framing device. And what comes after, though, is just bland, and I feel uninspired and uninteresting. And especially the second book, I felt like we needed to be ramping up to the third book, because apparently this series can kind of be split into 2 parts, the first 3 books and the last 3 books. And I just feel like so much now has to happen in the third book to make it interesting enough for me, because the second book, there was basically nothing happened. There were like 2 things that happened, and it was way too long for there to only be 2 things that happened. Probably still gonna read the third book, just because I still have so many questions that weren't answered in this one from the first book, and new ones from this book, and I just want to see, at least I'll finish the third book, because if it is kind of an ending point, that'll be a good place for me to be like, okay, I'm done. So I'll probably still pick that one up, but this one was heavily disappointing. Even though I didn't enjoy the first book, I thought that leading into the second book, it would got a lot better, especially because I do see a lot of people really enjoying this series, but I think it just might not be for me. And so I gave this one 2 stars, just because it was not good. That's gonna do it. Those are the 9 books I read in March. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you want to see more videos, feel free to like, comment, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.